All right, I will call the special meeting of the Board of Directors of the Los Osos Community Service District to order. And we will have a flag salute, please. Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and have a roll call now, please, Laura.
Director Sisenya,
I'm here.
Director Fourcroy, Director Gatchel,
Here.
Vice President Womack, President Ohilsky.
Present. So seeing that we have a quorum, can we have the announcement of closed session items, please?
Certainly, the board will be going into closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6 regarding labor negotiations. President, would you like to open up for public comment?
Yes. Is there any public comment on the closed session item? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment and adjourn to closed session.
Okay. Yes, we're being recorded.
Wait, could you go back to that prior page? Just wanted to, this is a regular meeting, not a special meeting. I got you. No big deal, I'm sorry. Okay, we'll reconvene to open session. So do we have a report out of closed session?
No reportable action.
Okay, no reportable action. We don't need to take any public comment, obviously. Okay, with that, then let's move on to general action items. And first one is 5A. The approve the fiscal year 2023-2024 mid-year budget adjustments. Recommendation is approval of the mid-year budget adjustments, and for background information, the Financial Advisory Committee recommended that you approve these adjustments. Or not you, we. All right, thank you. I'll turn it over with Ron now.
Okay,
Oh, just for public's information, we will take public comment after each item rather than waiting till we get to the end. So there'll be multiple times, but only for that one single item. Okay, thank you.
thank you very much. I just wanted to quickly go over the report format for people that may not be familiar with it. We try to, staff tries to point out the major adjustment requests in a narrative form, provide an impact to the budget, which is the financial impacts, and then provide a summary, which kind of shows how it all fits together within the each fund budget. Also, we attach the details of each fund. This year, we highlighted every change. You know, some are small, some are larger, but we did highlight every change just so you could find it better. The color version, they're yellow. In the black and white version, they're just a gray. As Marshall mentioned, the Finance Advisory Committee recommended approval of the mid-year budget as presented. The UAC, Utility Advisory Committee, reviewed funds 500 and 800 and had a similar recommendation for those two funds. So jump right into it. We'll start with Fund 100. Of course, this is our administration fund, and it is funded by a cost allocation plan that comes from the other funds. So we always try to keep this as neutral as possible so we don't have a ripple effect of increases to the other funds. And we were able to do it this year. We did have some increases in personnel costs. Those were balanced out by decreases in services and supplies. And again, I didn't go into a whole lot of detail on these, but you can tell if you want that detail, they are buried in the back details. If you have any questions on Fund 100, we're happy to be able to balance this one out. Any questions on Fund 100? If not, okay.
Okay, do we have any public comment on Fund 100? See, there's none in the room.
If you're online and you want to make a public comment, please raise your hand. There's
Okay, no
none.
public comments, so you can move on.
Okay, we are not covering funds 200 and 400 tonight because there were no changes recommended in those funds. So we'll jump over to Fund 300.
Would you mention what funds 200 and 400 are? Just
Oh, I'm sorry. That
people might
is
not.
the Bay Ridge
Vista de Oro.
and Vista de Oro neighborhood.
Okay.
And those are basically lighting districts right now.
Thank
There were several adjustments made, some up, some down in multiple areas. The net result is we actually decreased the Fire Fund 301 by a little over $20,000. It's easier than me reading some of the adjustments to put up the slide that shows the current budget versus the amended budget. One of the big ones was a change in our, for revenue was the investment income. We were able to increase that from $2,000 up to $80,000. As you recall, we did change our investment strategy after the budgets were approved. And so this is the net result from those decisions. Some of the other ones, as you can see, legal services had to go up, and that's based on our ongoing issue with county fire and some overpayment that we feel we're owed. Other things like the fire personal protection equipment, that's the PPE, went down. We weren't successful in getting a CAL FIRE grant that would help offset those purchases, so we reduced that. And all of these were approved or actually discussed with Battalion Chief Province. So these are all the recommendations that we put together. So how that looks in the budget summary, you can see our revenue that goes up, some small decreases in services and supply, a pretty good decrease in capital outlay for that net decrease of $20,364. Excuse me. Any questions on Fund 301?
There's some major swings there and a lot of things, the capital outlay, what?
Capital
caused
outlay,
those?
that one was mainly driven, our standard of cover study was in capital outlay because we know it's going to result in a project. So we try to keep those costs together as we move forward. So we know at the end. So the budget was anticipated quite a bit higher than the actual consultant fee that we're going to, we contracted for. So that's where we could feel we could drop that $20,000. And we also had some carry over for outfitting a new vehicle. And most of those did occur last fiscal year. We still may see a little bit of that for this fiscal year.
Would you go over 7238 again, the operational field equipment, current budget, and then the amended budget? What is that?
Which one?
It's not on that slide. It's in-
7238, yes.
Yeah.
That was the replacement of an engine in our utility truck.
Oh,
It
Okay.
had a brand new engine.
hard to plan for those sometimes.
Right, right.
Okay.
That it, Chuck?
Yes.
Any public comment on Fund 300?
Put the next slide up. I know this was just a slip by Ron, but the net change after these adjustments is a positive.
Right.
78,000 additional revenue, 20,000
Yes,
increase in expenses.
right. It was just an overall decrease in the operational budget of 20,000.
If you're online and you want to make a public comment, please raise your hand. None online.
Okay, seeing none, then we'll close public comment on 300 and move to the next one.
I did have a slide here, I'm sorry, that is the reserves for 301, and we have not touched reserves, so we're still very healthy and financially in 301. Moving to 500, there's quite a few things we had to deal with in 500. Just an interesting has been an interesting fiscal year. We had to do some adjustments in personnel costs, and this was the leap year oversight that added the extra payroll period that we didn't account for. There were increases in services and supplies, mainly to dealing with the Basin Management Committee projects and the new budget that's come out. They're on a calendar year budget, and so we'll have some cost increases based on that. And the most dramatic was increases in our well pumping costs due to rise in electricity rates. And we did, this budget or the mid-year shows a significant increase in capital outlay, but that's basically because over the past couple of fiscal years, projects haven't been implemented exactly on the fiscal year. And this, right now, a lot of the projects have come to a head. So we needed to show that the budgets, that capital outlay budget has gone up significantly. So again, a net increase in personnel costs. This was mainly due to some changes in standby pay and vacation pay and some in the wages. So the net increase was at $16,000. A net increase in the service and supply of a little over $35,000. And then the big one was the capital budget of $808,000. The overall operational budget was up by about, I think it was a little over $52,000. So that was the actual change there. Oh, here we go. And this shows where the salaries and wages and vacation pay, professional and BMC expenses, and then electricity. For the capital, as you can see, Program Seawell, when we estimated the cost a little over 2 years ago, was $2.1 million. In the bidding climate and with supply chain issues, that cost is closer to 3.1 million at this point in time. It could be even a little bit higher by the time we're finished, depending what goes on with the well equipping phase. The North Tank rehabilitation cost, it's complete, well, almost complete. They had to do some touch-up painting on it. But it went up from estimated 490,000 to about 600,000. But the Program Seawell is the main one there. And we haven't done the heavy equipment storage structure yet. We may have to continue that or move that out because we're gonna have to do some work on our South Bay lower well that's experienced some issues. So with that, the summary table shows you, again, like Fund 301, the investment revenue has gone up significantly. So now we're projecting around $97,000. Personnel costs, like I said, the 16,000, services and supplies, capital outlay, as I've mentioned before. So any questions on the water fund?
Matthew?
I'm curious about, like, I understand why we're adding all of that to capital outlay, but on Program C, are we gonna, so we're planning on getting to that before the end of June, basically?
Right, because right now with the completion of the drilling phase and the completion of the water transmission phase,
Is basically equipping now, right?
equipping is left, right?
And the delay there's electrical equipment.
Some of it's electrical, some of it's permitting. We're going through the county building permit process for the structure there. It's become a little more time consuming. So we'll get some cost incurred this fiscal year. There's like fencing, curb and gutter replacement in the front part where our access is going to be. Some of the work can be done. The building can actually be constructed once we get the permit, but the electrical components are going to cost.
Have we procured, like, already placed orders for that stuff?
Some of it, not all of it. We had to wait for PG&E to give us a they're going to do a service upgrade, so they provided plans and specs for that. So there's some of those things that we had to wait and see for their,
Yeah.
and
Okay,
then the
so
main
there's some
electric,
more procurement we could do also.
right.
Got it. Okay.
All right, any other questions? Okay, we'll go to public comment. Anybody in the room have a public comment? Seeing none.
If you're online, please raise your hand if you'd like to make a public comment. There's none.
Okay, we'll close it on this item and then,
One additional comment I'd like to make is that, you state here that the grant income has not been incorporated into revenue projections. So all of this is, we're planning as though we're not gonna receive state grants, even though we're probably in pretty good shape for those.
We are, and we have been submitting to the state for that DWR 1.5, and we've gotten quite a bit of money back from that. That shows up when we do our year in the audit. I just haven't built it in here because it's been very inconsistent on how that revenue comes in.
I guess I just want to call attention to
Yes.
the fact that, we still have that, and we've been doing a good job of securing those grants and, with reserves, we're in good shape.
Yes,
with increased costs.
And here's our reserves for water. And again, we haven't had to dip into reserves yet. So again, the water fund is in healthy condition. But a good point, Chuck. We do have some just an adjustment in solid waste, Fund 650. The main one here is the district share for an update of the solid waste rate setting methodology. We're partnering with the city of San Luis Obispo and hopefully others to have that update actually in place, hopefully in the next couple of 3 months, because we have a base year application coming this year from Waste Connections Mission Country Disposal. Mission Country Disposal wants to kind of fast track that in terms of once everything's settled on the rate setting, getting an application in, and we will probably need consultant services to help us with these more complicated applications. So I'm recommending an overall increase in the budget by 31,000 to cover the studies. And the summary is pretty basic here. It's just in services applied.
any questions? Public comment?
If you're online, please raise your hand.
I just got one
None online.
question. Mark.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So with the, I can't remember the SB of it, but the food waste program,
Mhm.
all that cost is already in these budgets, or is that?
Yes, and that's basically, well, not all of it. Most of those costs are through the garbage rate, that there is a fee on your garbage bill, Mission Country bill, that actually goes to the IWMA, who is doing a lot of the program services for the communities that are members to the IWMA. There will be costs to the district if the IWMA finds people or accounts out of compliance, and that we would have to take up the enforcement process, and we will have to do some of our own public outreach. So there are some costs that will incur.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, was more public outreach, because I guarantee most people
Right.
aren't doing it or aware of it even, or know what to do.
I agree. And I think that came up with finance. Yeah,
Okay.
on Monday night.
So, I have a question.
Go ahead.
This will be our first full fiscal year with that fund, right?
Yes,
So we'll be able
Yes.
to kind of see at the end of July, basically, like where we're at and how it worked and.
right. You can see it in the financials, but we'll also see how much money we have accumulated. And
Yeah.
again, we've talked a little bit about it at finance, maybe not so much at this level, that at some point, there'll be options of what we can do with that accumulation of money.
Yeah, because we built in some assumptions in all of our budgets, right? To start it, and now we'll
Right.
have some data.
And franchise fees are a direct relationship to rate increases. They go up as rate increases go up. And so there are several options we could have on how to utilize it. An example, Napomo Community Services District, every year or two, will pay everyone's garbage bill.
In December would be a good
Right.
one.
So there's things we can do. I think in the past, the district actually took a decrease in rate increase by applying some of those funds to offset costs.
Okay, well.
Because again, it's not our intent to just have a lot of cash sitting there. We want to help our customers.
Okay, so we'll move on. Do you want to go to 800 now?
Sure. This one's always been, or this year has been a hard one to nail down. Kind of kept it to what we know. So I've recommended an increase to our capital outlay budget because we are about complete with 2 additional studies that we needed to have to move forward with permanent repairs or create options for permanent repairs. And we also needed to understand the watershed hydrology for the Cabrillo area. So those added cost about the $61,000. Not all that 61, it's we'll state here, about 52,000 for the studies. And then we had some other increases that came to $9,650. So fairly minor in what we did here. Again, like I said, the uncertainty of how we move forward. I have been in contact with FEMA about what our next project is, and I'm applying for mitigation funds from FEMA to help offset those costs. So I have a conversation with them later this month to get into the works. So hopefully we'll be successful. Hopefully we'll be successful in getting reimbursement from our expenditures this last year as well.
Okay,
Any questions?
no other questions? Any? Okay, public comment?
If you'd like to make a comment, you're online, please raise your hand. Not online.
Okay,
We do have a small amount of reserve, and this was intentional. I think if you remember when we did the loan, we wanted to make sure we had some cash on hand for things that were unanticipated. Finally, Fund 900 Parks and Recreation. Basically, we increased the revenue they'll get because they do have money invested in our investment strategy. And we're not going to do any projects per se that we can foresee. So it's just be more realistic and adjust, since we were doing some adjustments, making these 2 to be more reflective of where this fund will end up. So this one's fairly basic as well. Any questions?
any questions on Parks and Rec? Okay, seeing none, let's go to public comment.
If you'd like to make a comment and you're online, please raise your hand.
Give me a chance. No public comment in the room.
So that concludes my presentation.
Okay, so do we have questions, comments, or a motion at this point?
I'll move that the board approve the mid-year adjustment requests as presented for funds 100, 301, 500, 650, 800, and 900.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any public comment on them? Okay, any public comment, Mr. Urban? Okay, thank you. All right, let's take a roll call vote, please. I would like to take one.
Committee Member Forcroy,
Yes.
sorry, Director Forcroy. Director Sisenya,
Yes.
Director Gatchell,
Yes.
President Ohilsky.
Yes. Okay, so now we're at agenda item number 6, which public comment for items not on the agenda.
If you'd like to make a public comment and you're online, please raise your hand, and in the boardroom, please come up to the podium.
Richard Margetson. I wasn't able to be here at your last meeting, but I didn't have results at that time. Needs and wishes this year. We were a little apprehensive going in because there were so many fundraisers in Los Osos last year, especially the Digging Deep and then the concert series at the community center. But we beat last year's total by a little over $1,000. The total was $61,032.75. We have presented the check to the NOR Clinic. Personally, they had us come out to the clinic and tour the facility with volunteers and donors. And you may have heard this, some of you may have heard this, but People Helping People and Needs and Wishes is now the largest non-grant related donor to the NOR Clinic all time. What we've donated from Needs and Wishes over the years, since this is the 10th year we've donated part of the proceeds to them, the equivalent amount of services that they can provide through our donation is just slightly over $20 million of equivalent medical services. And during those 10 years, our donation has covered everyone from Los Osos who has attended the clinic during that calendar year. This year, we actually found out that our donation technically covered Los Osos, Morro Bay, and Cayucas, because they keep statistics on each community that, where people are coming from. So not bad for a little community and a nonprofit with no paid staff. The other thing I wanted to announce, bell ringing this year, we're in charge of the bell ringers for Los Osos, coordinating, scheduling, pickups, deposits, everything. Was down a little this year. People are getting crushed at the grocery store. I mean, we had people come out, wish I could give a little more, would put something in, wish I could give a little more, but I just got killed in the grocery store. But got the results from comparison for the county, from the head of Salvation Army from out of Tascadero, and we were #1 in the region. Beat Paso, beat Tascadero, beat Morro Bay. Chuck rings every Saturday, has for years. Oh, I want to back up real quick. Needs and Wishes. Chuck won most of the wine. So if he hasn't invited you to a wine party, he won most of the bids on the wine thing. So I don't know if he's hoarding
I'm not
it.
sure if outbidding anyone is called a win or not.
Laura, you can turn it.
Anyway, so
I'll give you some extra time. for
just
that.
real quick, So, we talk about it all the time. Los Osos is a very generous community. I mean, they stepped up at digging deep, which we all had a hand in. Needs and Wishes, bell ringing, a lot for this community to be proud of in the charity category. So anyway, thank you for everyone who came, donated, promoted it. And the last thing I just want to leave you with, last Monday, let me just back up real quick. At Needs and Wishes, we have a matching fund pool. Whatever people want to put up ahead of time, or potentially put up ahead of time, if we have a donation bin, whatever's put in there, those donors will match that dollar for dollar. Last week, I got a donor who said this year, right off the bat already, we've got a donor who will match up to the first $10,000 this next year of donations, checks that are put in that donation jug. So nice start to next year. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you for your hard work on all these items. Okay, any other public? Okay, we'll close public comment and bring it to item number 7, which is the administrative and committee reports. So first item is A, Fire Department verbal report. Although we do have something in writing.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah,
All right, good evening. Sorry I can't be there in person, but long day of being out on the drill grounds all day, so I'm a little musty. So for the month, we had 144 calls. We had a couple vegetation fires. One that was probably got everybody's attention. We had something out in the park this weekend that was related to the state parks burn piles. One of them kind of kicked up and it stayed within their containment lines and no further damage done. Burned about a quarter of bonus acreage, stuff they were going to burn anyways. So if you saw a lot of commotion out there on Sunday, that's kind of what was going on. Mostly dominated by medical calls. We had 98 medical calls for service. We had 8 vehicle accidents within the area. One accident that we did have was down on the outside of town there on Los Osos Valley Road, heading down the hill. A couple folks got into it over there. We transported one to the hospital. We had 22 public assists and 1 hazardous call. It's kind of what I had as far as looking at our aid given and aid received. We're looking pretty even this month as far as aid that came in and aid that we gave out. I think just on one side we were +1 on aid given out by the engine, and we were even on the squad. As far as what we got going on, like I said, we had the fire out in the park upcoming. We do have a meeting that I'm going to be meeting with the resource management folks for the San Luis unit, our environmental scientist and our forester, talking about a fire plan as it relates to Los Osos proper and kind of some of the fuels mitigation products that we've been talking about the last few years and starting to get that plan rolling and implemented. A lot of it will be existing stuff that my predecessor was working on with the previous resource management folks, but now we actually are properly funded and properly staffed. So hopefully in the state lands we can start getting some motion on those things and start to ease some of the concerns that the local citizens have and getting some fuel breaks put in around the community. Obviously, we'll have to navigate all the environmental sensitivities and whatnot, but that's what we have environmental scientists for and ologists on staff in order to handle that stuff. So we continue to do a lot of training. This month we'll be going out to the drill grounds and we'll be working on forcible entry. So basically how the folks get into your buildings if we got to come in and get you, whether if your building's on fire or you need to be rescued out of your building. So we're going to be out practicing that. We are up staffing for the upcoming storm on Sunday. We'll have 2 rescues staffed with 4 urban search and rescue members per rescue. So that in the event that we do have any swiftwater rescue calls or surf rescue calls or cliff rescue calls, we have additional staffing in place. We will be working with the district on monitoring the retention basins as the rain accumulates, and if need be, we'll be ready to support you folks. Any questions?
No, but thank you very much. Any questions?
You're welcome.
Any public comment? Okay, no public comment. Thank you very, very much for your service.
Yep, and then for next month, we'll have our annual report. We'll be completing our annual statistical report. So I'll have an annual report for you guys next year. Or next month. So you'll have a lot more information.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll move to the next item, which is the Sheriff's Department report. Oh. Okay, so we'll move on to item C. California Highway Patrol report, verbal report only.
I am here, Greg Klingenberg from San Luis Obispo CHP. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, very good. For the month of January, we had two collisions that resulted in minor injuries. We had 6 non-injury collisions. We had 1 hit and run collision that did not involve injuries. We had a non-injury DUI crash as well. And then we made 1 additional DUI arrest for the month of January. No major injury crashes and no fatal crashes for the Los Osos Valley area. And with that, I'm certainly available for questions as well.
Okay, anybody have any questions? Nope, no questions. Any questions from the public? Seeing no questions from the public, thank you very much for your service and your report.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
All right, we'll move on to D, Utilities Department report. Says written only, but I'm sure somebody wants to talk about it.
Don't have a lot to report. Usually I'll have some updates on our CIP, but we kind of talked about several of those during the mid-year budget review. I did want to say that we've completed our Skyline groundwater monitoring wells at the east end of Skyline Drive. I just submitted the final report to the Morro Bay National Estuary Program, so we'll be getting payment from them. We got a $70,000 grant from them. So anyway, those will be part of our spring monitoring program. So we're happy to have those done. And if you'd like, Mr. President, I can move over to my general manager's report.
Well, let's see if there's any public
Questions?
comment on this.
Okay.
Any public comment online, Laura? Okay, we'll move on to the general manager's report.
Got a few things.
Item E.
Got a few things on this tonight. I wanted to provide an update on the standard of cover study for the fire department. We've had a final draft that Chief Province and I have reviewed, few comments. We'll be getting a final report out in the next couple of weeks, and I hope to have that to the board at the March meeting with a presentation by the consultant. So we're very excited about having that wrapping up. Couple of things I've been working on. I've been included by SLOCOG in the Morro Bay Climate Resiliency Transportation Plan study. The reason they wanted the CSD included is because of our potential intertie project, and that we the value of this, of course, is great for the community. We understand how that floods and the isolation it can cause, but it'll also maybe provide us with the opportunity for some funding assistance to as part of that program as they come up with a project. So it's been interesting to be part of that. We selected the consultant to do the analysis just last week, and I'll keep you apprised on the progress on that. Also, I know we talked last meeting about Title 19, the county's update to the water offset program, and that the board did authorize us to submit a letter with the other water purveyors. We were successful in getting that in. I've been in conversation with the county planning staff and Supervisor Gibson on trying to get a few minor changes made. But I'll make sure as soon as it's actually going to the board for the ordinance for first reading next Tuesday, and for final adoption, I think end of February. I think it's 26th or 27th. So I'll keep you apprised on how that goes. And then I don't know if I had mentioned, but I had spoken with Congressman Carvajal's office about possible funding for our intertie project. Hadn't really heard much back until today that I was notified that they did, Carvajal's office did submit our request for authorization for environmental infrastructure dollars. So we've made it past the first step. That's no guarantee for money being granted, but at least we're through that first round. So that was kind of exciting. I just got that notification this morning. And also, we've talked or not a lot, but some about working with S&T Mutual Water Company. And so I've been continuing to work with them on their water planning needs. I should have some more information on that for the March meeting, and with that will be in my report.
Okay. Any questions? Questions? Okay. All right, let's move on to the Baywood Park Chamber of Commerce report, verbal only. I have no report. The LOCAC report, written report only. Anybody have anything? Okay. Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, no report. The next meeting will be March 19th. Utility Advisory Committee meeting report, verbal report.
Other than the progress on the projects you've heard about. I guess the one thing I would add that we learned at our UAC meeting is that the Regional Water Quality Control Board expects to release an update on their nitrate studies at the west end of the basin in March. I think we heard from Mr. Bishop at the UAC. So there should be something coming from the Water Board, an update on those studies that S&T will certainly be concerned about.
Okay. Finance Advisory Committee, our chair's not here, but I already spoke to the fact that she recommended approval of the item that we approved, and then the other financial items on the consent agenda, the committee recommended approval of those also. Any questions about FAC? All right. So emergency services, no report, no meeting. I understand the next meeting will be pushed back to March. Is that correct? Okay,
Yes.
Basin Management Committee, verbal report. Mr. Cecina?
Yes, trying to remember what we did go over besides the updates on projects.
I'm trying to recall as well, because there weren't, most of the items were in the executive director report,
Right,
and it was
right.
mostly updates.
I don't think we had the spring, excuse me, the fall monitoring data we
That's
talked
correct.
about. And I think it was pretty inconclusive. Chloride's just bouncing.
Right, water levels up. Also, BMC has their own website. So it's been hosted by the county for all these years. It's now been moved over, and the executive director, Dan Heimel's running that. And also BMC was successful in opening a bank account.
That's right.
It's all coming back to me now.
That's right. We did.
And that's a big change, because there's never been a way to have agency pay into a fund and administered by the BMC. So this is a big change where the parties will be paying upfront in the fiscal year and then that way reimbursement will be much quicker. Sometimes, like, we're experiencing months and months before we get payment for the costs that we were incurring for some of the projects. So anyway, that's a major change.
It also lets you roll over funds too.
Correct.
Otherwise, at the end of that year, everything kind of reverted back where it came from. And yeah, it feels more grown up.
Does that mean you were kids when I was the chair?
No comment.
Adolescent.
No comment.
Okay, so directors' announcements of district and community interest and reports on attendance at public meetings, training programs, conferences, and seminars. Anybody have anything?
One thing I want to bring up is that there's been an effort in the community based on last year's storms and the fact that we realized that we were not prepared in terms of emergency response. So Mr. Munns has been working with some other people in the community to put together a CSD specific agency annex to the county's emergency operations plan. And so this is the first step in maybe looking at turning the community center into a full evacuation center with generators and being prepared, fully prepared. So that's a big step.
It is, and I'm going to bring that to the ESAC board once we're at a point of rolling it out. And, the big thing will be more organized participation, not only by district staff, but also the board of directors.
Absolutely. We'll each have a commitment. I think that'll be involved in, it's needed.
Right. Cool. Okay, I just wanted, as the representative, I'm on LAFCO for the special districts, as the chair of that now. I just wanted to give an update. Every 5 years, we're supposed to do a review of the municipal service and the sphere of influence for every community. We just completed the one for Cambria and Avila Beach, and we approved both of those unanimously. So moving along on that. Okay, so anybody else have anything? Otherwise, I'll move on to my exciting thing here. Okay, item number N.
We're still on
We're
those.
still on it.
Yeah.
I get, and then response to previously asked questions, and then I got you in my mind here. All right, so appointment of district committees, et cetera. So in the staff report, there's a outline of what was last year. So I'm just going to run through it. So the Emergency Services Advisory Committee, we're gonna move up. We're gonna flip positions there. Mr. Gatchell will be the chair and I'll be the vice chair. And then the FAC will stay the same as the way it is with Womack as the chair and me as the vice chair. Parks and Rec will stay the same, chair as, pardon me, Director Matthew, and vice chair is Director Gatchell. Utility Advisory will stay the same also, Director Cecilia as chair and Director Forcroy as vice chair. So other than the flip on the first ones, the other ones will stay the same. Basin Management Committee will stay the same with Director Cecilia and Director Forcroy. The CAP or CAPSLO will stay the same with Cecilia and Forcroy. You guys make a happy pair here.
Anybody else wants to step up?
Yeah, and then Fire Safe Council, we're gonna make a change there. Director Womack will be the appointee and I'm gonna be the alternate there. And then the Los Osos Community Advisory Council, it rotates every month as a different person. The Estuary Program, I'm gonna keep myself as the appointed person and Womack as the second in command. RAC, we'll have Chuck again and Mr. Munns as the alternate. And then one thing I just wanted to add to this that came up in our in my thought process, talking to some of the board members here. I'm going to continue the Cabrillo Basin Ad Hoc Committee for another year. So I think that's important, especially since I'd like to see that cycle through another storm cycle just to make sure it performs well. And if it doesn't, that we have people available that have knowledge and our engineering knowledge. So I'm going to point to that Matthew and Chuck as the two members of that. So that ad hoc committee will continue for another year. So that's my appointees for the upcoming year. Unless anybody wants to reject it. Okay, done. Here's my gavel. Done. Okay, and then response to previously asked questions. There's one that I'm familiar with that one of the things that has slipped through the cracks here is doing our annual review of the legal services to the district. So we are going to restore that starting next month. So we'll be looking at that in closed session next month. Because that's just, we've had more important things going on. Okay, do you have something, Ron?
No, no other questions have been unanswered.
Okay, any other? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the public comments for the administrative and committee reports.
If you're online, please raise your hand.
Richard Margetson. I didn't want to abuse open public comments, so I'm going to tie this into the fire department report. Needs and wishes this year. Also, every year we have barrels for Operation Santa Claus in the toy store. We filled 2 full barrels and 17 large packing boxes. We estimate probably half of the toys from the toy store went to Operation Santa Claus this year, and all of the toys got purchased. So that was something. And then Ron talked about this service document that's coming from CAL FIRE, which kind of jogged my memory. 20 years ago, this year, we defeated the first fire tax, which they wanted $125 per general parcel, single family home. As of this current fiscal year, we haven't even reached that for the ratepayers in Los Osos by defeating that and then passing yes on A05 in '05. And we pay for all our vehicles in cash. We have a higher level of service. It was a dogfight, but I think it's one of the most important things that happened to this community during that period, and that was right in the middle of the sewer wars also. But just to jog everybody's memory, that's almost 20 years ago we passed A05.
Thank you. Any other public comment for items on the administrative and committee reports? Okay, seeing none. Does anybody have anything to pull from the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, since I skipped over the public comment on consent agenda, since I didn't know if anything was going to be pulled or not, does anybody have any comments on the items on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move for a motion to, oh, this is what I usually do. You're gonna have to do it, Matthew. It's your turn, Matthew.
Okay,
You
I,
used to be the seconder, now you have to be the motion.
I move that we receive and file the administrative committee reports and approve the consent agenda.
Very good.
I will second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We don't need, we do?
I have a resolution on there.
Okay, we'll have to take a roll call on that, yes.
Director Forcroy,
Yes.
Director Sisenya,
Yes.
Director Gatchel,
Yes.
President Ohelski.
Yes. Okay, so discussion of pulled items. We don't have any items pulled. So now y'all get to do the Brown Act training again.
Where's he going?
Wimp.
Yes.
I've only seen it 43.
Hey, Richard, I've given it 43 times.
There must be a good rerun on tonight. Lakers and Celtics, that's what it is.
Oh, God. All right, you got it up, ready to go, Laura? Oh, Ron has it? I'm not gonna go fast. Can you start back at the first page? Okay, so the purpose of this is to understanding the Brown Act open meeting requirements. You as, or us as the board has to hear this every year, and then all of our committees have to hear it every year. So this year, because of the timing and my illness, I wasn't able to give it to anybody before, so you guys get the first act today. There's very little changes since last year, I have to say that, so, but I will run through it. So the purpose of the Brown Act was it establishes the procedural framework for members of local governmental decision-making bodies to openly meet, debate, and act. It provides the means for the public to be informed about the views, discussions, and actions of its locally elected and appointed governmental representatives. The overview to the Brown Act: governmental officials are elected by the people, represent the people, and govern on behalf of the people. The public needs to have the ability to observe, monitor, and evaluate its elected and appointed officials. The Brown Act is designed to encourage public participation in local government. As was said back in 1863 by President Lincoln, government of the people, by the people, and for the people. The history of the Brown Act is it was introduced by Modesto Assemblyman Ralph M. Brown, which is obviously where the name comes from, more than 50 years ago. The legislature has frequently added to the requirements of the act over the years, and the requirements are detailed, comprehensive, and complex. Okay, the intent of the legislature, the Brown Act is Government Code Section 54950. The Brown Act embodies the philosophy that public agencies exist for the purpose of conducting public business, and the public has the right to know how its quote unquote collaborative decisions are being made. The people in delegating authority do not give their public servants the right to decide what is good for the people to know and what is not for the good for the people to know. Can you pause that? We'll go back there, please, for a second. I just wanted to stress one thing here. In that second paragraph there, I mean, this is the intent of the government code section that's in the, was done by the legislature. And I think it's important to know that we are public servants. And it's, as public servants, it's not up to us to decide what people know and what they don't. We're serving the public, okay? So we can move on. Openness is a key requirement of the Brown Act. All meetings of governmental bodies which discuss, deliberate, and act on public's business must be fully open and accessible to the public. Exceptions to the rule of openness are few and far between. Now, there were some changes made during COVID, but we'll talk about those when we get there. Okay, subjects, organizations, or organizations that are subject to the Brown Act are all governing boards of local governmental agencies, which is us. The advisory and standing subcommittees created by such governing agencies, which is our subcommittees, FAC, UAC, ESAC, et al. And all boards, committees, and bodies created by federal or state law. There are some things like created by state law, for example, LAFCO and things like that, that are subject to the Brown Act, even though they're not local agencies. Well, even though they're created by the state. Okay, a meeting. It's a very, very simple definition. A meeting is any gathering of a majority of the board of members at the same time and place that involves any aspect of the decision-making process. And we'll talk a little bit more about what aspects of the decision-making process are. Okay, exceptions to the Brown Act are conferences, training, and workshops, community forums and meetings of other governmental bodies. So if we all go to the Board of Supervisors, social or ceremonial occasions. But within these exceptions, board members must avoid talking about any applicable business while they are at any such event. Okay, prohibited activities. Here we go. Any use of direct communication, personal intermediaries, or technological devices. So we have direct communication, a person acting, or a AI acting, that are employed by a majority of the boards to develop a collective concurrence as to an action that's going to be taken on an item is strictly prohibited. First one, for example, is a serial or daisy chain. That's a meeting, is a series of meetings to develop a consensus. Although each meeting involves less than a majority of the board members, only 2. However, when taken together, this involves a majority of the board members. So you talk to him, I talk to you, blah, blah. That's a daisy chain or a serial meeting. Secondly is a hub and spoke meeting, which is when a single board member, you're on my right hand, so I get a point to you, Chuck. So if Chuck acts as a contact point for the other board members and communicates to each of them the other board members' positions in order to reach a consensus. So the serial chain where we talk in a row is prohibited, or when there's one of us that's only talking to one other one at a single time. Both of those are strictly prohibited. Okay, use of email. These things changed in the last few years, obviously, because they didn't have technology back when they passed this in the 50s, but board members cannot use email to develop a collective consensus, agreement, or decision. So you can't send out emails to all of us saying blah, 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 and this is what I think, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in order to try to get a consensus on your position. Or you can't just exchange the information in email about your views or positions so other people will know where you're coming from and then they can figure out how to come up with a consensus or a negotiation. And then responses to any emails sent to all board members should only reply to the sender and not a reply to all. So if we all get an email from Susie Blow, we can only respond to her, not to all the rest of us. So you got to copy reply to sender, not reply to all. Okay, this was passed a few years ago. I know this is Chris's favorite thing and she's not here to hear this. So if you're listening, Chris, I'm getting into your emoji discussion now. Okay, so AB 992 in 2020 modernized the Brown Act's provisions concerning serial meetings by addressing the use of social media by members of a board. So AB 992 clarifies that it ordinarily does not violate the Brown Act to participate in social media and allows the use of digital icons, i.e. emojis, in discussions on social media. Now, I'm kind of this is a leery one to me because it seems to me if you give a thumbs up, then people know what your position is. But for some reason in this social media, which I'm not obviously a qualified expert in, the guy smiling with his magnifying spectacle on doesn't matter. So you can do that, okay? Now, what you cannot do, there's a bright line rule that board members may not respond directly to any communications posted on the internet by other members regarding a matter within its jurisdiction. So if you go on the county's website or who knows whose website and post something, the board member can't respond directly to that posting. And then what that means is a board member may post a thumbs up or other emoji, but may not do so if the post is from a fellow board member's post. So what's the confusing thing to me here? It says in response to a constituent social media post, you can do it. But if it's, and I mean, all of us can read that. So it seems like we can see it regardless. So this just seems a little falling between the cracks. But anyways, that's where it is. The emoji, the thumbs up. Okay, you can do it if it's a social media post, but not if it's from another member. Okay. Location of meetings, relatively simple. A majority of the board members must meet within the boundaries or jurisdictional area of the governmental entity with only specific exceptions, including the inspection of real property or meeting with federal state officials to discuss legislative or regulatory issues. So again, we can only meet within, a majority has to meet within our boundaries. A quorum. Noticing requirements, notice and an agenda for regular board meetings must be posted in an accessible location 72 hours in advance and mailed to all those who request a notice. Special board meetings may be called by posting a notice and an agenda at least 24 hours in advance. Agendas must contain a brief description of every item to be discussed. They have to be clear enough and not technical enough or not too technical. So the average member of the general public can understand it. So if you start to use initials or acronyms and nobody knows what that means, it's problematic. Agenda for board meeting must include a time for public comment. Okay, this was passed because of COVID, AB 2449. Now, the governor in, I think it's February 2023, declared the COVID emergency over. And so because of that, AB 2449 will go out of existence next year in 2025. Because this was just meant as a measure to handle the COVID crisis. Okay, under 2449 rules, the board may hold a hybrid meeting as long as a quorum is in person without having to comply with certain requirements. So in the old days, if somebody came from a remote location, there had to be an agenda posted there and it had to be accessible to the public. That does not have to happen under AB 2449. But a hybrid meeting can only occur under under two circumstances. First of all, if the board member has just cause, and this is, I took exactly from the act, has just cause including family caregiving need, a contagious illness, need to relate to physical or mental disability that is not otherwise accommodated, or travel while on official business. Sorry, I missed that comma after accommodated. So those are the four things that allow you to do that. So those are the reasons for not attending the meeting in person. Okay. Now, the second thing is the board members experiencing a physical or family medical emergency that prevents the board member from attending in person. I know these sound very similar, but they're different. So for the board member to rely on the above findings to justify meeting by teleconference, it must have concurrence from the in-person board members. So if I'm visiting my brother who's having major issues and I say I can't attend, before I'm allowed to participate in the meeting as a member, the board has to take action saying, we understand that that's just cause and he was able to participate in the meeting. Okay. Under AB 2449, the board must give the public notice of how to access the meeting and offer public comment, because it's going to be different than the old way of remote. And avoid requiring public comments be submitted in advance. So people can submit public comments prior to the meeting, but we can't require that they do it. Okay, public rights. Public members of the public have the right to address the board members on both agenda and non-agenda items as long as they're within our board's jurisdiction, which is not a big geographical area. Be accommodated if disabled so they can access and participate in a meeting. Receive copies of all written materials distributed to board members with the sole exception of privileged items. Okay, removing disruptive attendees. State Bill 1100 amended the Brown Act to provide that the presiding member of a board, which is me, may have an individual removed for disrupting a meeting. Before removal, the person must be warned that their behavior is disruptive and that continued disruption may result in their removal. However, no prior warning is required if the person is engaging in use of force or threatening to use force against any individual. So, okay, enforcement is relatively straightforward. This hasn't it's changed since the 100 years I've been doing this, but civil remedies, people can file a civil suit where the judge could order compliance with the Brown Act, can be enforced by the judge. In most cases, when it gets to this situation, the entities normally just change what it is and they don't want to get into a long civil lawsuit. And then if the court doesn't agree with that, the court can declare actions void because they're not in compliance with the act if they're not cured. So if somebody doesn't want to go through the litigation, the court can say either you do or it's gone. So, and the district can be liable. Well, it should be, will be liable for legal costs and attorney's fees. Okay, now we're at the conclusion, almost. This is the complicated part. You guys can't talk to each other. And I want to let you know, I changed some of the questions since last year. So if you have the answers memorized, they're the same basic questions, but I changed the language a little. So what may have been false before may be true now, but it may not be. Okay, first of all, one, a meeting as defined in the Brown Act occurs only when some action is taken.
False.
Yeah, it's false. I mean,
If you post an agenda. even
Okay,
if you're
that's
not-
false. You're all right. 100%. Okay. Board members may poll each other by social media on any issues which may come before the board.
Eh,
That's false too.
Okay, 2 for 2.
Even with emoji calls.
Yep. Okay, a discussion between two board members of a 5-member board, which is this board, is considered a meeting under the Brown Act if the board members discuss district business.
False.
Now, if you get this one wrong, we got problems. Okay. Sorry, I had to write the answers down because I wouldn't want to make sure. In a hybrid meeting, all teleconferencing locations must have an agenda posted and be accessible to the public.
False.
Okay. 5, any person may record an open meeting of the board via audio or video recordings.
Sure. Yes.
You guys are perfect. Okay, 6, a member of the public may address the board at a regular meeting on any item of interest to the public, provided the matter is within the jurisdiction of the board.
True.
True. 7, the board may require public comment be submitted prior to the meeting.
False.
Okay, 8. The board chair may limit the amount of time members of the public are allowed to speak on matters of public interest.
True.
True.
Oh, man, you guys are gonna ace this test. I gotta make it more difficult.
All this, all my studying is paid off.
I don't think I'll get perfect scores at all the committees, but, okay, we got 2 more. The board may hold its meetings at any location it chooses within the county, provided the public is properly notified.
False.
Okay, I rewrote this one. I gotta read this thing. Warning is required before removing a person who is disrupting or impeding the orderly conduct of a meeting while merely threatening to use force.
False.
It's false.
Okay, perfect scores. You guys all get to wear crowns tonight. Okay, so we're at future agenda items. Do we have anything to bring up here?
No.
Okay, seeing none, then closing board comments. I don't think so as a presentation. We can.
If you want to make a public comment on the Brown Act, raise your hand. No public comment.
Okay. All right. Future agenda items, we have nothing. Okay. And then closing board comments, please.
Thank you for Brown Act training. Good luck with all the rest of them.
You know, you did a great job because we all did perfect scores.
Exactly. You aced it. Thank you. Mr. Gatchell. He's not talking to me because I made him the chair of ESAC. I think. Okay, with that, then we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting until March.
That's right. It is February.
I know.